So here we have 1500 points worth of Deathwatch here. I've gone for an infantry heavy force with the Corvus backing them up. So starting off with the HQs, I have a captain with power sword and plasma pistol, and I have a watchmaster, as is, of course. I then have 4 units of veterans. Starting off with the first unit, that's 4 frag cannons, sergeant with a xenophase blade and a combi melter, veteran with a storm shield and power maul, 2 termies, 1 has a thunderhammer storm shield. Then moving on, I have another unit of veterans. This time it's only got 3 frag cannons, 2 shotguns, another 2 termies with the same loadout, and this time the veteran has the storm shield and the power sword. The third unit today is a unit of 6 models, so it's 5 veterans. The sergeant and 3 of the guys, the ones with power swords, all have stalker bolters for that heavy 2, AP -1 nastiness. And there's one guy, one bolter bitch there at the front, the ultramarine, and a cyclone missile launcher wielding termi. And then finally I have a unit of Deathwatch, sort of more on for melee. So there's a guy with a power maul, it's a power leg. He's also got a combi melter. I've got a black shield with lightning claws, and then I have 4 guys, 1 bolter bitch, 3 with power sword and bolter, and then 1 termi with assault cannon, and they are travelling in a Corvus with the mortal wound droppy thing and the twin assault cannons and the missile launcher, as storm strike missile launchers as standard. So they'll be facing off against 1500 points worth of Genestealers, and I have never faced Genestealers before, so this will be very interesting. I'm very excited and also very nervous, so let's see how this pans out.
So here we have 1500 points of Genestealer Cult, my Brotherhood of Nod themed army. So starting off on the right, we have 3 units of light infantry neophyte hybrids. Each one is 15 man strong, and the models may look like they've got a mixture of sort of auto guns and shotguns. I just run them as militia weapons, and they all count as having auto guns. The sergeant has an auto gun, and then there's a grenade launcher and a flamer in this squad. Exact same situation here. All got auto guns. Sergeant has an auto gun as well. No power maul today. It's 1500 points, and then a grenade launcher and a flamer. And the last squad, again, all auto guns. Sergeant has an auto gun and 2 grenade launchers. Then have 1 big old blob of Genestealers, 20 pure strains in one go. Behind them we have the Patriarch and a Primus. And rounding off this detachment we have 15 Acolytes, and they are armed with the Cult icon, and that is the sergeant, but he doesn't have his bone sword and lash whip today. He's just got his regular weapons. And then I have 6 mining weapons, and I just use all these as rock saws, and I just label it as mining equipment essentially, just to keep it simple across the army, not to complicate things. And then in a separate detachment, in a spearhead, I have 3 rock grinders. I like to sort of use these as devil's tongues from the sort of Command and Conquer game, and each one is armed with a clearance incinerator, a heavy stubber, and a drill dozer blade. And this attachment is led by another Primus. So there we go, 1500 points of Genestealer Cult.
So in terms of Warlord traits and relics, Tim can't use the relic because he's not got the model in his army. So
it's an icon ward that needs it. I don't have an icon ward, and it's only 1 relic from Chapter Approved.
So there we go. So he's just got the 6-up Feel No Pain and the psychic power of Mass Hypnosis.
Yep.
And then I have the Tome of Ectoclades, which lets him change the targeted sort of unit choice, the mission tactic, for units within 6 inches of him once a turn. And he also has the Castellan of the Black Vault, which adds 1 to the damage characteristic of 1 weapon, which is obviously going to be his big stabby, shooty, killy stick. Right, okay, so this is deployment. We have a unit of Deathwatch here, the Overwatch squad, with a Corvus with 6 guys in, the unit with the assault cannon termi, just swooping overhead as they enter into this region of the Underhive where people have been going missing, and there's been various signs of xenos cult happenings. So we're entering into this sort of wrecked, ravaged, sort of half-abandoned area of the Underhive to see what we can find, and it looks like we're about to come across a nest of Genestealer cult, and we'll have to call in the reserves to the teleportarium and purge this planet of the foul infestation. So let's see who goes first. We already rolled once off camera, and then we got a 5 and a 6, and I finished first, so we can do it on camera now. So I got a 1 and again. So a 5 from me plus 1 makes 6. What did you get?
I got a 3.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So Deathwatch first. Let's see what happens. In terms of deployment, it's quite obvious. We're in table quarters and we're doing retrieval mission. So because I actually got to place my objective last and Tim placed his objective first, I got to pick. So that's why I went table quarters. And then there's 3 objectives down this end of the board. 1 there, 1 just in front of the Deathwatch position in the open. There's 1 on this table quarter that's not occupied, and then the 4th one is over in the nest. So it looks like the Genestealer cult will have to push us out of their hive. So the Deathwatch got off to a furious start after the Overwatch squad located the initial target. The Corvus Blackstar swooped overhead, rolled 10 dice as the max on that 15-man squad. I think killed 2 with mortal wounds. Then we moved quickly onto the shooting phase. These guys were those Stalker Bolters with the Kraken rounds. It's just so nasty, AP -2. So 8 shots from them, managed to kill a few more of the neophytes that were stood on this gantry here. The Cyclone missile launcher really messed up. I shouldn't have targeted him at the neophytes, but I did. Just got carried away. And he only rolled 3 shots. He got 2 hits, but then 2 wounds, 2 kills. So that worked out okay. Then the Corvus continued to unleash with Hurricane Bolters and Assault Cannons into the remaining sort of 6 guys of the squad and just absolutely tore them apart. Just sparks flying from that gantry as limbs tossed to each side. And finally he just put 2 Stormstrike missiles into this guy. And Tim got a 1 feel no pain on his truck, so he took 5 wounds, which is really good because that, 6 dice, getting 1, that's absolutely average, and that stopped him from being below half wounds. Yeah. So really nice little ability on those light vehicles, just make them that slightly more resilient. They're almost in the medium vehicle.
Use a command point.
Oh, and I used a command point to get the 2nd wound on that because I got a 1 and rolled it to get 3. So, first blood to the Deathwatch. They've swooped in and drops a hail of fire on the Genestealer hive. So let's see what they can do in response. And I honestly have no idea what's going to happen in the next sort of 15-20 minutes because I've never faced this army before. Should be interesting and probably quite horrible. From a player perspective, this is already shaping up to be a really cool cinematic battle. The Deathwatch have come in, they've dropped some bombs on the nest of Genestealers, and then like hitting a hornet's nest, out of burst 3 technicals, all with those heavy flamers advancing towards my Overwatch team, and then basically a few guys repositioned and advanced just to make sure that I couldn't deep strike and frag cannon that guy, and a few shots primed off of here. 1 autocannon actually managed to do a wound. And he also got mass hypnosis on me, represented by that little badge, which will -1 from the Corvus. And one of the things, if you're a Deathwatch player, is that the Corvus is not a reliable hitter like the rest of the Space Marine army. It often gets -1 to hit with those assault cannons. So, that will definitely help to improve the Genestealer cult resilience. So, absolutely rapid turns. Let's see what happens in Deathwatch turn 2. So I really deliberated over this decision because there's a lot of factors to take in. But eventually I decided to drop in all my teleportarium units on this bit of terrain here. And I put this unit within heavy slug range, so 12-inch strength 9 AP -3 of one of the trucks. And I slugged it to death. I got 10 wounds even after the feel no pains. Tim decided to command point one of the feel no pains. He got that 6, but then Storm Bolters managed to finish the job. I got 1 wound through. These guys, they didn't have that much to do, but I thought I'm going to bait him in. I'm going to bring them all in at once because I think that's a better idea than bringing them in separately. I'm kind of not sure if that was the right decision, but I thought let's get some damage on now. But then they totally flubbed all their shots and only did 2 wounds to this truck with their frag cannon, so that blows. This squad, again, absolutely flubbed all their shots. They fired everything at this guy who was on 3 wounds, including 2 crap missiles, loads of stalker pattern bolters, and Tim got 6s on every feel no pain that went through. So ultimately they couldn't do those 3 wounds that they should have easily done. But those wounds, but he was taken from 5 to 7 wounds by this guy firing 2 Storm Strike missiles behind him. He couldn't fly over anybody because of the angle this turn, but he did manage to strafe into these guys and kill 6 or 7. So all in all, not a great turn. I did about, well, 15 wounds to vehicles all in all, which isn't bad at all. 14 wounds to vehicles all in all. Killed about 6 neophytes. I mean, I have exposed myself, but it was always going to be a case of a sort of reserve off. Both these armies have approximately 740 points. Mine's about 700 and Tim's about 740 points of 1500 off the field in reserve. So it was always going to be a tactical cat and mouse, and I've decided, right, now's the time to commit because I'm a shooty army and I want to, you know, get some damage in as many turns as I can with those shots, and also because whilst the Corvus, you know, he went straight across here, then he's cut a sharp left at 90 degrees. That has meant that basically all of this area is within 9 inches of one of my units. He can't go behind me, so I know he'll only want to bring 1 Genestealer unit in because of it. He can only use the stratagem once, ideally. So basically, this guy, who probably is going to reach me, but will have to face a load of frag cannons, and another unit will have to come at me from roughly the same direction, or at least this guy will have to hit them, and anyone who parked in this corner would have to hit these guys. So, you know, I thought, I don't want to expose myself early, but at the same time, you know, I have got a nice bubble to hopefully stop him getting everything off that he wants, although, you know, he will be able to advance at me probably, but who knows. So I've done the best I can. Let's see what comes out of the woodwork now. In Genestealer Genestealer Club, turn 2. Right, so I don't normally roll dice on camera, but this is an epic cinematic charge. So Tim managed to get his 20 Genestealers in over here. He got a 5 on one of his 3 dice, because he rolled 3 dice and he could choose to reroll, but he decided not to, used a 5, and he moved 6 inches towards me, so he had a 3-inch charge. His Primus got off, is it Mass Hypnosis, that spell?
The Patriarch used Mass Hypnosis, so they can't do Overwatch. They have 1 less attack and they are -1 to hit me. And the Primus used Meticulous Uprising Stratagem to give them roll 3 dice and pick the result I want on the cut ambush table.
So he's got these guys into combat here with my first frag cannon unit. So it's 68 attacks in total on Rending Claws. So we've got 54 here. And then I'll have to roll.
So I'm hitting on 2s because of the Primus and the Patriarch nearby, but basically I've got a buff character nearby.
Right, so after all the dice were rolled, Tim got 5 6s, so that's 5 AP -4 attacks or wounds, and then the rest, I've not counted them, but a fair few AP -1 attacks from those Rending Claws. So I'm going to roll these individually because I'm going to spread them across my Termes and my Vanguard, my Veteran. So it was a really interesting combat phase, and the Deathwatch did actually manage to survive the initial salvo of strikes, because the Storm Shield Termi managed to stop all of the AP -4 attacks with his Storm Shield, but then was brought down ultimately by just normal attacks. The other Termi also managed to protect the squad and took a lot more attacks, but then once it was down to the frag cannons, I rolled my frag cannons 2 at a time, because I thought, I'll keep my Vanguard Veteran and a couple of frag cannons to pull back. I just flubbed my frag cannon rolls, they all died. The Vanguard Veteran was left with about 7 wounds against him, but he passed them all, and then made a tactical withdrawal and disappeared off the battlefield. He just engaged his thrusters and shot into the sky. So
by the Emperor.
By the Emperor. I will tell of your deeds, brothers. And off he goes. So the Genestealers weren't able to engage over here because of that, because he died in the battle shock phase. So I've got the 3 frag cannon unit, which isn't as scary. Tim refers to the other unit as the scary unit. I'm a Watchmaster here. I've got my Corvus ready to bank round and do a strafing run. And this unit remains totally unharmed because all gunnery went into that squad and it all bounced off in the Genestealer shooting phase. So it's a really exciting battle. We're going punch for punch. Let's see what I can do to purge these filthy xenos before the next wave pour in. Those neophytes are really cool. So the Deathwatch did what they had to and got rid of those Genestealers, but it took a lot more dice than I would have liked. So first of all, the Corvus streaked over, dropping a flurry of napalm bombs on the Genestealer nest and killed 1 with a mortal wound. Then the frag cannons opened up at danger close, point blank range, and I got just under an average amount of auto hits. It wasn't so bad. The Watchmaster at the beginning of the shooting phase used the Dominatus Doctrine and his book, or I declared the Dominatus Doctrine and his book, so that these guys were re-rolling 1 to wound against elites, and the Dominatus Doctrine meant I was wounding on +1, and as the frag cannon was a strength 6, that meant I was wounding on 2, auto-hitting, wounding on 2s, re-rolling. But then Tim did really well on his saves, and I only killed 11 out of 19 wounds on his 5-up invuns. But that happens. Shot him with the shotguns, got 11 hits, that was really good. Again, Tim did really well on his wounds, and I only killed 1 more. So I was really starting to sweat at this point. So I decided I really wanted to shoot the Corvus assault cannons at these guys whilst in the open, and just chew them up. And I wanted to actually shoot them with my Overwatch squad, because AP-2 would have taken away that armor save, but I just couldn't see them from here. So instead what I did was I shot these guys at the Genestealers, managed to kill 1 more, and some crack missiles over here, did a bit more damage to this guy. So it's a bit of a complicated turn for the Deathwatch, but they really needed to be strategic to get the most out of the turn. And then finally I still had 6 Genestealers to deal with, so even though I didn't want to, decided to fire my Stormstrike missiles at this guy, and did the wounds and blew him up. Tim got an explode, but used one of his command points to re-roll the dice and got 5. And then he just strafed all his assault cannons, all his hurricane bolters into those 6 Genestealers, and yeah, did the job. So it took everything to clear Genestealers, and I know I've got Aberrants coming in. There are Acolytes coming in with some mining machinery, and I know I've got this guy up close and personal. He's going to get in next turn, I would say. So it's a really sketchy position for the Deathwatch, but they are holding on, and there's 1 lethal unit dealt with, and if I'd had them still running around on the battlefield this turn, it would have been game over for the Deathwatch. So it's a really tense game and really epic as we try and purge the underhive of the Genestealer cult. Let's see what happens in their next turn. So the Genestealers started off by moving this guy up ready to charge here. Neophytes moved forward, and this guy moved forward, everyone just flaming and spraying and dackering at the remaining Deathwatch, holding this area. And then these guys teleported in about, they were basically an 11-inch, 12-inch charge away roughly. And then Tim had an amazing shooting phase and managed to kill, I think it was 3 of my Deathwatch models in this squad that were stood here, 2 shotguns and a Termi it was. And that actually took him out of a declarable charge with these guys. So this guy charged in on his own, and he managed to get a lot of hits and that, but and a lot of wounds.
No, I got 3 wounds.
Oh, you only got 3 wounds, even with re-rolls. So he messed up his wounding, wounding on 3s, because he's got all the AP in that, and he does high damage, loads of attacks, but that strength is just not quite enough to just absolutely deck through toughness 4 models. And then I had my 2 storm shields in the squad, which I always take, and the Termi actually saved all of them, and Tim even used a command point at some point in that combat. And then his other guy, what's he called?
Primus.
The Primus charged in from here, screaming, waving his arms about, flailing wildly, but the untrained fool stood not a chance against my mighty Watchmaster, who's been fighting with that glaive for hundreds of years. And yeah, he just got run through and lifted up in the air, tossed down the sides, dead and lifeless. The fool, ha ha ha. So these frag cannons are still alive, and my Vanguard veteran's still in there and alive with a storm shield. I expected him to be alive and my Termi with storm shield to die, to be frank. I thought, yeah, they'll be able to pull back and shoot, but I'll lose the Termi in the process. The final thing to mention, the Termi actually managed to get 2 5s to hit, or 1 5 to hit. I can't remember. Yeah, either way, he did 3 wounds to this guy, and that was that. So yeah, Deathwatch are looking thin on the ground. These guys are down to the core models. Watchmaster's doing his thing. They're being closed in on, and they've still got this big unit to deal with. It's not gone anywhere, but we will see what we can do against the remaining horde of Genestealers. Right, so the Deathwatch had a really good turn. That's kind of secured the game, but also, you know, a bit of an annoying finish, but what can you do? It was a very cinematic finish nonetheless. So these guys pulled out of combat, and because the veteran, and they were within 8 inches, they just shot down into those troops. So I was rerolling 1s to wound, and I was wounding on 2s anyway. Auto-hitting, got 21 hits, shredded the best part of the unit. This guy's Hurricane Bolter, he went into hover mode and strafed in there and finished them off. This guy's Hurricane Bolter and Storm Strikes went into him, and Tim passed every single invuln save. This guy threw a crack grenade but failed to wound. These guys fired, only 3 of them could see, but they fired with their heavy 2 weapons into these neophytes and killed 4 of them, which was pretty good. And then my my Watchmaster with his Garden Spear fired 2 shots, 2 hits, 2 wounds. Tim got his saves, and I charged in, hit on 2s, wounding on 4s because he used the book to give real 1s to wound against HQs. It's very complicated, the Deathwatch army. It's very wordy when you're describing what you do. And then he promptly went in and got all 2s and 3s to wound, despite hitting with everything, and so Tim didn't even have to use his invuns. Then Tim just killed him in return. So I thought, you know, got to go in there, slay the beast with a Watchmaster. That's absolutely what would happen in this scenario, in this battle. But you know, unfortunately, sometimes the dice just don't reward, you know, fluffy play, and you know, my Watchmaster died. So that was that. So Tim's looking, you know, really thin on the ground. He's got this bunch of about 90 points worth of neophytes plus these guys, so what, like 103 points worth of neophytes or something like that. And this guy who's on 3 wounds, but probably will win the game because, you know, he seems to be absolutely unkillable no matter what I do. But, you know, it's looking pretty strong for the Deathwatch. So we'll see what happens in Tim's turn 4.
Yes.
Oh, my captain started sauntering forward over to this objective. Not that I think it'll matter because he'll do this Return to the Shadows thingamajig. Anyway, on to their turn 4. So Tim did everything he could tactically to make the most of the resources that he had left with his Genestealer. So first of all, he took the Patriarch and moved him down a level. So he couldn't be seen by the cannons up here, the frag cannons, but he could charge the Terminator that had moved down to be more than an inch away from him in the previous turn, because I wanted to pull back here and frag these guys. Honestly, this game has come down to inches. You know, it's really been played to the wire. It's been and cinematic as well. It's been everything you want from a game. Really fun. So then he also he shot a bit at these guys. You know, shot away. He moved these guys up an inch or 2 to be in rapid fire range, but everything bounced off the Thunderhammer Termi, who had 1 wound left. He then struck with this guy, who managed to just take the wound off the Termi. And it looked like, right, job's going to be a good one. And then struck with these 2 neophytes, just to get them out of the way, and unsurprisingly, you know, passed my saves, nothing to worry about there. Then he struck with his Patriarch, and he got 1/6, which is an AP -6 damage wound, and he also got 3 AP -3, so it should have been enough to do the job, so I was really careful. And I rolled my first AP -6 against the Storm Shield, you know, may as well. And I got that 3 up, so he lived. And then I thought, right, I've got 3 AP -3, so 6 up on these guys. If I can just get lucky and get one of them to get a 6, so 1 lives out of the 3 wounds, then I'm happy for that 1 guy to pull back with this guy and just spray 1 frag cannon, you know, 2-man duo, because they can still do a lot of damage. Anyway, so I rolled 3 dice, AP -3, 3 6s, and like me and Tim have been, you know, saying all day in the game, you know, my dice have been a little cool. Not anywhere to the point where I've been unlucky, but just the point where it's basically balanced out the fact that Tim has an index and I have a codex, because obviously the index gives Tim a little disadvantage. So dice gods have been pretty fair, but then it looks like all my luck was saved for that one moment. You know, it's just one of those, 666, you get it occasionally. So maybe the 4-armed god is trying to tempt me in with his evil 666 omen, but you know, I'll stay faithful to the Emperor, and now we'll go on to Deathwatch, turn 5, probably, or possibly, the last turn of the game. So, as suspected, all of my luck went into the 3 6s that saved my frag cannons last turn, and I blasted into this guy, got 21 automatic hits, got about 14, 15 wounds. Tim was taking 4 up saves, and he passed all but 3 of them, and 2 went on to the neophytes with unquestioning loyalty, so he took 1 wound. It was just absolutely...
Had a couple of feel no pains as well.
Had a couple of feel no pains in there, but just absolutely ridiculous amount of firepower this guy's absorbed. I can't get my head around how much he's absorbed. He took 1 thunderhammer.
The 4-armed Emperor is immortal.
I think he is the 4-armed Emperor. Then the Corvus flew over here, because I was hoping to just like strafe him off this objective. Oh, you need to do your thing for that. You need to actually roll the dice, because they're over 6 inches from him.
There was 15 in the squad,
yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's 4, we've got leadership 8. No, they're okay.
Fine. So, yeah, so they lost a few. He killed 1 with a mortal wound, sprayed into them with hurricane bolters and assault cannon, and fired his 2 storm strikes, because they're the only guys he could target. The only 2 models Tim has on the board are characters. I only killed a handful with all of that firepower. Tim got, again, really lucky on his saves.
It's the -1 to hit from mind control.
Yeah,
mind control.
Well, that helps. I mean, but I got 6 hits with my assault cannon still, or 5 hits with my assault cannon still, even on 5s. Yeah. It's been a really interesting game. Sort of, the dice gods have really helped to be a cinematic game. This guy just doesn't matter. They pull back, they frag him. He lives. Every time the dust settles, he emerges from the smoke, charging towards them, ready to tear them apart. I honestly can't see how they'll survive another charge against those characters, but we shall see. And this guy's also in Linebreaker now, which is sweet. Okay, so on to turn 5 for the Genestealers. Right, so for Genestealer turn 5, the neophytes decided to abandon their objective, realising that tactically all was lost, and they probably would have to abandon this area of the Underhive for now. So this guy, of course, can hold this objective with the 5, 6 guys that are still in him. This captain is within 3 inches of the centre of that objective, and these guys are standing strong on this objective as they have done all game. So what he did was he moved forward and sprayed off a hail of lead with his auto guns and pump action shotguns, but failed to do any damage. However, the Patriarch managed to kill 1 from Smite. The first time he's cast Smite all game. He then got an 11-inch charge with his neophytes, which meant I wasn't able to use my frag cannon sort of blast, because that's a max range of 8 inches, and they got in. The Storm Shield guy was pulled down, and then ultimately, by the Primus, I believe it was, and then ultimately, as the Corvus streaked off into the distance, out of sight of the Overwatch squad, the neophytes, instead of killing the final frag cannon veteran, they peeled off his armour. The Patriarch leaned in close, and the last that was seen of the battlefield was the Deathwatch veteran stumbling off, half naked, seemingly confused, muttering to any denizens of the Underhive that he came across,